If that isn't economic terrorism, I don't know what is. So we have the congressman on with us. We only have him for 6 minutes. Congressman Brad Sherman, thank you for coming on, sir.
Good to be with you. You know, Wall Street used these panic tactics to get us to pass this $700 billion, what the bill really is $700 billion in unmarked bills. They said the market would drop by 4,000 points, blood would flow in the streets, and lions would be devouring children in the parks of Los Angeles. Now that the bill is passed, our economy is still going to be very bad in the fall and winter, but the Wall Street folks will come out and say, well, it was a great bill. After all, there are no lions in the parks of Los Angeles. So we've got to do everything we can to focus people's attention on this bill as it's carried out, because it allows Paulson to go up to Wall Street. He can give money to one firm. He cannot return phone calls from another firm. He can he can, if he wants, finds out which firms are donating to the 527 organizations, which take secret contributions and then make political advertising. He can look at the RNC donor list. He can do anything he wants.
Congressman, I know that you're moving forward now, as a good congressman would, for your constituents, now that the corruption is passed through economic terrorism. But let's go back to what you said on the floor in the last 24 hours about members of Congress. And I've talked to some. They're afraid to even come on and talk about it, being told there will be martial law in America, and we'll just do this with or without you if you don't do this. That is incredible. And I just had the former head of the Treasury on earlier, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts from Reagan, had a policy saying that this gives them economic martial law.
Well, I know that some comments like that were made. I didn't take them seriously. I know some would. I thought it was just overblown effort to create a panic in order to pass a bad bill.
Is that not terrorism? Is it? I mean, is not the definition to threaten harm or carry out harm for a political aim, sir?
Well, they didn't say they'd shoot anybody. So usually terrorism involves threats of violence, and whether a drop in the Dow is violent or not, I mean, I'm sure that somebody had a heart attack when the market dropped a few hundred points. But keep in mind, we passed the bill, and I'm told the market is down.
Is it not? Well, sir, we have cyber terrorism. They call hacking terrorism under the Patriot Act, Section 802. Any action, they claim that is even a misdemeanor is terrorism. I mean, to have $1 trillion, $200 billion loss in one day with them fear-mongering, I call that economic terrorism.
Well, I don't think of it as that big a loss. That was, if somebody on the other side of town sells their house at a fire sale price, I don't really think that makes me think all of a sudden I'm a lot poorer.
I understand.
But there are a few people who sold at fire sale prices on last Monday, and the fact is, if they held, I mean, the same people who say we lost $1 trillion Monday would say, well, we made back $2/3 of $1 trillion Tuesday. The whole GDP of this country is only $14 trillion. I don't think we made $1 trillion or lost $1 trillion on any one day.
Sir, here's the $64 million question. You and other members of Congress say, yeah, well, there were some people threatening martial law, but we don't, think they meant it. They were just trying to fearmonger, which I call terrorism, into it. That's a huge issue. Specifically, sir, we need to know names. Who told you that they were told that martial law and blood in the streets, as you said, would happen?
Private conversations between members on the floor. You really can't reveal without the permission of the other party.
I understand, but were there arm twisters coming up, or were they scared? I mean, how was it said specifically?
I think these were people who really believed what they were saying. I don't think these were people who got called by Goldman Sachs and said, well, go say this or go say that. The panic takes a life of its own. One person says market will drop 2,000 points. Somebody else says 2,500. Somebody else says 3,000. Somebody else says the unemployment will jump immediately to 9%. Somebody hears that.
It spreads. It gets worse and worse. So something.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think there was, or at least I'm not aware of this being, carefully orchestrated. But I think now what we have to do is expose those circumstances where we're bailing out a particular firm And how many of the executives at that firm are continuing to make $1 million a year, $5 million a year, $20 million a year? That's the message that needs to get out each and every time assets are purchased by Treasury on this.
By the way, Congressman, you are, for the listeners, uniquely positioned to be able to comment on all this. You work for some of the most important and prestigious firms doing audits of multinational corporations and of government entities. So you know what you're talking about with these.
I know what I'm talking about, but there's going to be a lot of information that is not public, and it's going to take investigative reporters to find out things that congressmen can't find out and that the public is not going to be aware of. You know, I have to go right now, but it's been a pleasure being with you.
Sir, let us get you back on for longer in the near future. Thank you, Congressman.
Look forward to it.
Thank you. We skipped that break because we got him on a few minutes late, and then he only had about 5-6 minutes. So there you heard it, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, there were people on the floor saying they were told martial law and literal blood in the streets if this didn't happen, and they were told this, but I can't tell you who told me. Meanwhile, the Army is in the Army Times saying, oh, we're here for civil emergency martial law. The John Warner Defense Authorization Act says that the governors run nothing, Congress runs nothing, PDD 51, it's all there, and this is being threatened. And now, according to Paul Craig Roberts, Dr. Roberts earlier, this gives economic martial law power to the Treasury. So in one way or the other, they got it. Now, I'm going to do this. I want to open the phones up. For people out there listening at the bottom of the hour, specifically on what you think of the banker takeover and the martial law and all of it. And we're busting our butts here to bring you these congressmen, these eyewitnesses, these reports. We really appreciate all of you tuning in today. Record audiences. The Internet's a small part of our audience, hundreds of thousands. But still, it's a key gauge, and it's record streams listening on the InfoWars streams, record people tuned in just there. I know there's record numbers listening on the AM and FM dial, shortwave satellite right now. The Internet's engaged. By the way, I misspoke earlier. I said 83,000 people a day download the podcast. It's now 98,000. In 1 week, it's grown to 98,000 a day downloading the free podcast at InfoWars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Now, we skipped this network break. Don't worry, sponsors will get your ads played. On a later day for that break there. But in times like these, we've got to take every minute we've got. So I didn't just skip that on the Internet streams. We skipped that network-wide. But I'm only going to give each caller about a minute. I'm really bad about taking long questions, then I babble. I'm just going to let you have your say, kind of like radio graffiti, as some call it. I'm not even going to comment much. I'm just going to let you have your rant. Be ready, 1-800-259-9231. The toll-free number to join us, 1-800-259-9231. A lot of days, Ron Paul says, I can definitely come on at this time, and then he always comes on, or sometimes something comes up, and then he has to reschedule. He may be popping in still in the next 40 minutes, so that might mess up some of those that want to call in, but barring him calling in during the calls we'll be taking, we'll be going to those. I'm going to take a break right now for the next 5 minutes and finish up some of my speech before the City Council in Austin 4 years ago. Back that up about 20 seconds for listeners out there, and we'll continue with how long ago we were warning everybody about the situation. And we'll come back. We'll take the next break in about 4 minutes, and then we'll come back and take your phone calls right here on the GCN Radio Network. Stay with us. Now, that makes me very angry, and that's why it's so exciting that this council may simply just say we have a Bill of Rights and Constitution, and we will not violate the Bill of Rights and Constitution, and in this city, America is still America. I mean, it's just that simple. Now, I'm sure you heard about 5 years ago about the FBI crime lab. The head of it, Dr. Frederick Whitehurst, who I've interviewed several times, said, I'm not doing this anymore. We've been framing people, manufacturing evidence. This is out of control. I've interviewed FBI agent Tyrone Powers, who talked about how they would frame people, the different criminal things that they would do. Tulia, Texas, 56 black people. No criminal record, no drug paraphernalia, no nothing. On the word of one corrupt cop, gave them all 20 to 90 years in prison. Now you think about that. Houston Crime Lab, thousands framed indiscriminately. The police chief had to admit it because his job's on the line. He's claiming, oh, I'm going to fix that problem. It's equivalent of Hermann Goering, promising to stop what Hitler was up to. This is amazing, ladies and gentlemen. So this is why we restrict the scope and size of government. and its power over us in our lives. Because we know there's criminals on the street, we know there's bad people, but they don't have the massive mechanisms, the machinery of government and military and militarized police and prison complexes to oppress at levels never before seen. Last century, 200 million killed by government. 200 million killed. Millions of American Indians, Native Americans, killed in this country. So don't tell me we shouldn't have a concern when the most draconian legislation in the history of the world, dwarfing Byzantine Spain and France, is rolled out against the people.